The rain began falling upward at 3:17 in the morning. Not everywhere. Not across the whole world. Only above the old coastal city of Marrowgate, where the streets bent around black canals and buildings leaned so close together their rooftops almost touched like whispering conspirators. Mira Venn saw it first from the window of her repair shop. She had been awake because the clocks were lying again. Every clock in the district had stopped at midnight, then started counting backward in different languages. The brass wall clock above her workbench ticked in Latin. Her wristwatch whispered numbers in a voice that sounded like her dead mother. The ancient station clock across the street had grown a second hand made of bone. Mira was used to strange things. Everyone in Marrowgate was. But rain was supposed to fall down. She stepped outside barefoot, wrench still in hand, and watched silver droplets rise from the cobblestones into the clouds. They climbed slowly, trembling like frightened insects. Puddles peeled themselves off the road and vanished skyward. The gutters emptied backward. The canals lifted thin veils of water into the dark. A man across the street crossed himself. A child laughed once, then started crying. Mira looked up. There was something behind the clouds. Not lightning, not aircraft, not any storm she had ever seen. A shape pressed against the sky from the other side, as if the night were cloth and some enormous hand was pushing through. The city sirens did not sound. That frightened her more than the rain. Marrowgate had sirens for everything. Flood tides, fever fog, tunnel fires, riots, escaped laboratory birds, even royal visits. If the sirens stayed silent, it meant either the danger had no name or the people in charge already knew and had chosen not to warn anyone. A knock came from inside her shop. Mira froze. She lived alone. The knock came again, slow and polite, from the locked cellar door beneath the stairs. "Mira," said a voice from below. "Open it." Her fingers tightened around the wrench. No one used that cellar. It had been sealed before she bought the building. The estate agent had called it a structural precaution. The previous owner had called it a mouth and refused to explain. "Mira Venn," the voice said. "Your father left instructions." Her breath stopped. Her father had been missing for 9 years. Not dead. Not officially. Missing. Elias Venn, clockmaker, engineer, drunk, genius, liar. The man who taught her how to mend engines by listening to their rhythm. The man who vanished the night the central bell tower rang 13 times and half the city forgot his name. Mira backed into the shop and lifted the lantern. The cellar door was exactly as it had always been. Iron-banded oak, painted shut, sealed with 7 rusted bolts. 6 of them now lay on the floor. The 7th turned by itself. "Mira," the voice said softly. "Please. The rain means they found the roof." She should have run. Instead, she opened the door. Darkness breathed up from below, smelling of salt, dust, and old electricity. On the first stair sat a brass cylinder the size of a child's lunch tin. It had not been there yesterday. Its surface was etched with her father's handwriting. "For my daughter, when the sky remembers us." Mira nearly dropped the lantern. Inside the cylinder was a film reel, a folded map, and a silver key shaped like a human tooth. She did not touch the key. She took the reel. Her projector was older than she was, but machines liked her hands. After 3 sharp strikes and 1 whispered apology, it flickered awake. White light struck the back wall. Her father appeared. Not as she remembered him near the end, hollow-eyed and smelling of cheap spirits, but younger, sharper, terrified in a way he had never allowed anyone to see. "Mira," he said on the film, "if you are watching this, I failed to keep the city asleep." A sound came from outside. A deep metallic groan rolled across Marrowgate, shaking dust from the ceiling. Somewhere far away, glass shattered in a long sparkling scream. On the wall, her father continued. "You were told Marrowgate was built on drowned marshland. That is false. You were told the canals were made for trade. False. You were told the old bells mark tide hours. False." The film jumped. Burn marks crawled across the frame. Her father leaned closer. "The city is not built on stone, Mira. It is built on a lock." The shop lights burst. Mira ducked as bulbs exploded one by one. The projector kept running. Beneath Marrowgate is a door older than language. Your grandfather helped seal it. I helped hide it. And you! The film crackled. You were born with the only thing that can close it again. Mira stared at the wall, cold spreading through her ribs. Outside, people began screaming. Not many. Just enough to tell her the city had changed shape somewhere in the dark. The image flickered. Her father's face distorted, then returned. They will come wearing familiar faces. Do not trust grief. Do not trust memory. Do not trust anyone who knows a secret you never told them. A fist slammed against the shop's front door. Mira spun. Through the rain-streaked glass stood a woman in a soaked blue coat. Myra's mother. Impossible. Her mother had died 12 years ago beneath the North Bridge, her lungs full of canal water and her wedding ring missing. Now she stood outside the shop, pale and shivering, one palm pressed to the glass. Mira, her mother whispered. The projector behind her hissed. Her father's voice rose, urgent and broken. If someone you love comes back tonight, run. The front door unlocked itself. Mira could not move. Her mother smiled with trembling lips. Open the door, little star, she said. I've been so cold. Behind Mira, from the cellar below, something massive knocked once from underneath the city. Then every bell in Marrowgate began ringing backward. The bells did not sound like bells anymore. They screamed. Every tower in Marrowgate erupted at once, not in harmony but in violent reverse rhythm, as if the city itself were choking on time. Windows cracked across entire districts. Canal water trembled. Pigeons burst from rooftops in black spirals. Mira stumbled backward as the front door swung inward. Cold flooded the shop. Her mother stepped inside. Not walked. Stepped. Too smooth. Too precise. Like something imitating movement after reading about it in a book. Water dripped from the hem of her blue coat, but the floor beneath her stayed dry. Mira, she whispered again. The voice was right. That was the worst part. Not close. Not almost. Perfect. The same softness. The same slight rasp from winters spent coughing beside coal stoves. Even the tiny pause before her daughter's name, like she was savoring it. Myra's throat tightened painfully. You're dead, she managed. Her mother smiled sadly. That's a cruel thing to say before embracing someone. The projector rattled behind her. If it speaks first, Elias warned from the wall. It already knows your heart. The woman's eyes flicked toward the projection. For one brief second, something behind her face moved incorrectly, like another expression trying to crawl through skin. Then the smile returned. You always trusted him too much, she said. Myra's blood froze. Only her real mother had ever said that sentence. The bells outside screamed louder. Another impact thundered from beneath the city. Dust rained from the ceiling beams. Somewhere nearby, masonry collapsed into the canal with a massive splash. Mira, her mother said softly, taking one careful step forward. You have to come with me now. No, you don't understand what's happening. I understand you drowned. The woman's expression flickered again, briefly irritated, then wounded. You watched them bury an empty coffin, she said. You never saw my body. Mira opened her mouth and stopped, because that was true. No body had ever been recovered. The canals beneath the North Bridge fed into the old submerged tunnels under the city. Recovery crews searched for 6 days before giving up. The woman took another step. You were 8 years old, she said gently. You kept asking why my shoes floated back without me. Myra's vision blurred. No one knew that. She had never told anyone about the shoes. Not even her father. Behind her, the film projector sputtered violently. Memory is the first door they learn to open, Elias said. The woman lunged. Mira reacted on instinct. She swung the wrench hard across the woman's face. The impact should have shattered bone. Instead it made a sound like striking wet porcelain. Her mother's head snapped sideways unnaturally far. Skin split along her cheek, and darkness moved underneath. Not blood, something black and glistening. The woman straightened slowly. disappointed. "That hurt," she said. Then the shop exploded inward. The front windows shattered as a city transport carriage slammed sideways through the street outside, metal screeching against cobblestone. People were running now, dozens of them, flooding through the rain-choked avenue in blind panic. Some were bleeding, some were carrying lanterns, some were looking upward at the sky and weeping, and behind them, emerging through the rising rain, came figures wearing familiar faces. Mira saw dead neighbors, dead policemen, dead children, all walking calmly through the chaos. The thing wearing her mother turned toward the street. Almost eagerly, Mira ran. She grabbed the brass cylinder, the map, and the silver tooth key from the table before diving through the back workshop door. The alley beyond smelled of smoke and salt water. Rain streamed upward around her face. Behind her came splintering wood. The thing was following. Mira sprinted through the narrow alleyways of South Hook District, boots slamming wet stone. Around her, Marrowgate convulsed. Street lamps flickered blue. Canal water rose into twisting columns. The ancient rail line overhead groaned as sparks cascaded from broken power cables. And beneath it all came a sound she had never heard before. Breathing. Not human breathing. Something deeper, vast, as though the city itself had lungs. Mira ducked into an archway and unfolded the map while trying to steady her shaking hands. It was not a city map. It was a diagram. Concentric circles layered beneath Marrowgate like hidden machinery. Symbols covered the paper in red ink. Tunnels, chambers, massive sealed vaults beneath the canals. At the center was a single phrase written in her father's handwriting. "The Bellkeeper must not wake." A droplet of water struck the page. Then another. Mira frowned. The alley was covered overhead. The droplets weren't falling from the sky. They were floating upward from the ground. Tiny beads of black water rising around her boots. The breathing sound deepened. Mira looked down. The cobblestones were moving. Not much. Just enough. Like something enormous was turning in its sleep beneath them. A scream echoed nearby. Then gunfire. Then silence. Mira folded the map and forced herself onward. The city center glowed ahead through the rain haze, where the great bell towers rose above the canals like black teeth. Emergency sirens finally began sounding, but distorted, warped into strange underwater moans. As she crossed Hollow Market Square, she saw the first military barricade. Armored trucks blocked the avenue. Soldiers shouted through megaphones while civilians pushed desperately against the barricades. "Get inside. Avoid reflective surfaces. Do not respond to familiar voices." Mira slowed. A young officer grabbed her arm immediately. "You alone?" "Yes." "You bitten? Touched? Spoken to?" "What?" The officer shoved a small mirror into her face. "Look." Mira saw her own reflection. Exhausted eyes, rain-soaked hair, smudged grease across her cheek. Normal. The officer relaxed slightly. "Go to the underground shelters," he ordered. "Now." "What's happening?" He hesitated. Then his gaze drifted upward. Mira followed it. The clouds above Marrowgate were rotating. Not naturally. They formed a gigantic spiral centered directly over the old cathedral district. Lightning flashed deep within the storm, illuminating something impossible hiding inside it. A circular structure. Enormous, metallic, turning slowly behind the clouds like a hidden machine. The officer whispered before he could stop himself. "The roof is opening." Suddenly, every radio in the barricade erupted with screaming static. Soldiers clutched their ears. Vehicles stalled simultaneously. Then a voice rolled across the square. Not from speakers, but from everywhere. Warm, ancient, hungry. "Bellkeeper," it said. The cobblestones beneath Mira's feet vibrated violently. "Your city has remembered me." People began collapsing around the barricade, bleeding from their noses and ears. The officer staggered. Mira backed away in horror. The voice continued. "Open the final lock." Then all the streetlights in Marrowgate went dark at once. And in the blackness beneath the city, something enormous opened its eyes. Darkness swallowed Marrowgate whole. Not ordinary darkness. This one felt alive. It moved through the streets like ink poured into water, creeping across windows, climbing walls, slipping beneath doors. The emergency floodlights along Hollow Market flickered weakly before dying one by one, leaving only the pale silver glow of the upward rain. People panicked instantly. Some ran. Some dropped to their knees praying. Some simply stood motionless, staring into the sky as though listening to voices no one else could hear. Mira forced herself to move. The officer near the barricade was still alive, clutching his bleeding nose while shouting orders into a dead radio. "Get underground," he yelled. "Stay away from the canals." The canals. Mira looked. The black water was rising vertically now in long twisting strands, threading upward into the clouds like roots searching for soil. Then the first body surfaced. A woman emerged slowly from the canal beside the market bridge, floating upright without disturbing the water. Her skin was gray and swollen. River weeds hung from her throat like necklaces. Her eyes opened. People screamed. The dead woman climbed onto the street. More shapes followed behind her. Dozens. Drowned men, children, workers, elderly figures wrapped in burial cloth. Some looked decades old. Others fresh enough that water still poured from their mouths. The soldiers opened fire. Bullets tore through bodies but barely slowed them. One corpse reached a barricade and touched a screaming civilian gently on the cheek. The man froze. Then his face changed. Not physically at first. Emotionally. Every expression vanished at once, replaced by calm, perfect stillness. He turned and walked directly into the canal. Others began following. Mira backed away, horrified. The officer saw her. "You!" he shouted. "Run!" The drowned surged forward. Gunfire became chaos. Mira sprinted through the side streets while screams echoed behind her. Somewhere above, thunder rolled through the rotating clouds. The giant hidden structure beyond the storm was becoming clearer now. An immense ring suspended in the sky, slowly turning like a key inside a lock. Her father's map felt heavy beneath her coat. The Bellkeeper must not wake. She needed answers. And there was only one place left in the city where answers still lived. St. Vale Cathedral, the oldest structure in Marrowgate. The bells, the lock. If her father had hidden the truth anywhere, it would be there. Mira crossed through Lantern Row as the city deteriorated around her. Entire apartment blocks stood abandoned with doors hanging open. Trams sat motionless on flooded rails. Shadows moved behind curtained windows. Twice she heard her name whispered from nearby alleys. Twice she ignored it. The third time the voice laughed softly. "Good girl." Mira stopped cold. That voice had belonged to her father. She turned slowly. Elias Venn stood beneath a flickering street lamp. Or something wearing him did. He looked older than the recording. Thin. Exhausted. His coat soaked black by the rain climbing upward around him. One side of his face twitched unnaturally. "Mira," he said quietly, "you shouldn't go to the cathedral." She gripped the wrench harder. "You're dead too." "Not yet." That answer unsettled her more than any lie. The thing stepped closer into the dim light. Its eyes were wrong. Not inhuman. Too human. Overflowing with grief so deep it looked bottomless. "You opened the cellar," he said. "I hoped you never would." Mira's throat tightened painfully. "Are you real?" A long silence. Then, "Yes." She almost believed him. Then she remembered the warning. "Do not trust grief. Tell me something only he would know." The figure smiled faintly. "When you were 6, you dismantled my pocket watch because you thought time was trapped inside it." Mira froze. "You cried for an hour because you couldn't put the minutes back." The memory hit like a knife. No one knew that. No one. Her grip weakened. The figure noticed immediately. "They're waking faster than we predicted," he said urgently. "You need to come with me now." "Who's waking?" His eyes drifted downward. Beneath the streets. The choir. The ground shook violently. Far away, somewhere beneath the city center, a colossal metallic groan echoed upward through the canals. The thing wearing Elias flinched. They're opening the lower gates already. Mira stepped back. What are you? His face broke. Not physically, emotionally, as though some unbearable truth had cracked him open from the inside. I'm what's left of your father. The streetlights above them burst simultaneously. Darkness flooded the alley. Then hands emerged from it. Dozens of pale hands reaching from windows, sewer grates, doorways. Dead faces followed, smiling softly as they crawled toward Mira through the shadows. Her father shoved her backward. Run! The dead swarmed him instantly. Mira fled. Behind her she heard screaming. Not monstrous screaming, but human, agonized, familiar. Her father's voice. She nearly turned back. Then the screams stopped all at once. The city became quiet again. Too quiet. Mira reached Cathedral Square shortly before dawn should have arrived. But dawn never came. The sky remained locked in endless stormlight. St. Vale Cathedral towered above the square, black stone glistening beneath the upward rain. Its massive bells rang backward in uneven intervals. The stained glass windows glowed faintly from within despite the darkness. The front gates stood open. That frightened her immediately. St. Vale never opened its doors at night. Never. Mira climbed the cathedral steps slowly. Bodies lined them. Not dead. Sleeping. Hundreds of citizens lay shoulder to shoulder across the stone staircase, breathing in perfect rhythm. Their eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids. Some whispered in languages she did not recognize. Others smiled. The cathedral interior was worse. Candles burned blue along the nave. Priests knelt motionless between the pews. Water dripped upward toward the ceiling in shimmering strands. And at the center of the cathedral stood a machine. Massive bronze gears surrounded the old bell tower shaft, extending downward through the floor into darkness below. Symbols covered every surface. Ancient chains thicker than ship anchors disappeared into the abyss beneath the cathedral. The entire structure was trembling, like something below was pulling on it. A voice echoed softly through the chamber. You came sooner than expected. Mira turned sharply. An old woman emerged from the shadows near the altar. Blindfolded, tall, wrapped in dark ceremonial robes threaded with silver bells. In one hand she carried a lantern filled not with flame, but swirling black water. I know you, Mira whispered. The woman nodded. Everyone in Marrowgate knows me. And it was true. The Bellkeeper, the silent woman who walked the canals every midnight ringing silver chimes no one understood. Children feared her. Adults avoided her. No one knew her real name. The Bellkeeper tilted her head slightly. Your father hoped the city would die before this night arrived, she said. He underestimated how patient sleeping gods can be. The chains beneath the cathedral suddenly jerked tight. A deafening impact shook the floor. Dust exploded from the ceiling. Far below them, something enormous laughed. The laughter did not echo upward. It rose through the cathedral floor like pressure through deep ocean water, vibrating inside Mira's bones instead of her ears. The sleeping citizens across the cathedral steps moaned softly in unison. The chains beneath the bell shaft strained again. One snapped. The sound cracked through St. Vale like artillery fire. The Bellkeeper closed her eyes. We are out of time. Mira stepped backward from the trembling abyss beneath the tower. What is down there? The old woman lifted her lantern. Black water swirled inside it without spilling. A memory, she said. One the world buried. That thing called me Bellkeeper. You are. I repair engines for a living. No, the Bellkeeper said quietly. You repair seals. Another impact thundered below them. The bronze gears surrounding the shaft lurched violently, turning half a rotation before locking again. Ancient mechanisms groaned throughout the cathedral walls. Mira stared into the darkness below the tower. Something far beneath was moving upward. Slowly, deliberately. How do I stop it? The Bellkeeper's blindfold fluttered slightly, though no wind touched the cathedral. You do not stop it alone. Then help me. The old woman remained silent long enough to become frightening. Finally she spoke. I cannot descend. Why not? Because I opened the first lock. Mira's stomach tightened. The bellkeeper turned toward the altar. There, half hidden beneath hanging chains, stood an enormous circular door built into the cathedral floor. Symbols covered its black iron surface. 12 empty keyholes ringed its center. Only one key remained inserted. Silver, shaped like a human tooth. Mira instinctively touched the matching key in her pocket. The city was built above the breach 600 years ago, the bellkeeper said. Before Marrowgate existed, fishermen vanished here. Entire ships disappeared in fog without sound. Then the dreams began. Dreams of a sleeping thing beneath the sea asking to be remembered. The old woman moved closer to the vault door. My order believed it was divine. We were fools. Another chain snapped below. The cathedral trembled violently. One of the sleeping priests outside began screaming in his sleep. Mira stared at the circular door. What happens if it opens? The bellkeeper answered immediately. The sky opens with it. Lightning flashed through the stained glass windows. For a brief instant, the rotating structure above the clouds became fully visible. It was not a machine. It only looked like one from far away. In reality, it resembled a colossal eye. Metallic rings rotated around a hollow center vast enough to swallow districts whole. Strange lights pulsed along its inner surface like nerves firing through a brain. Mira felt suddenly small, hopelessly small. That thing in the sky, she whispered. The mouth, said the bellkeeper. And beneath us? The thing dreaming through it. The floor shook again. This time Mira heard singing, very faint, coming from below the cathedral. Hundreds of voices layered together beneath the earth. Beautiful, terrible, the choir. Mira stepped toward the shaft before fear could stop her. I need to see it. No, I need answers. You need distance. Mira ignored her and approached the edge. Stone stairs spiraled downward around the massive chains, disappearing into darkness. Ancient lanterns burned blue along the descent. The singing grew louder. Not words. Humming. A lullaby sung by too many mouths. Mira. The bellkeeper's voice sharpened. Do not go below the 7th landing. Why? The old woman's expression hardened beneath the blindfold. Because after the 7th landing, they can touch your thoughts. Mira descended anyway. The air grew colder immediately. Not natural cold. Wet cold. The kind found deep underwater where sunlight never reaches. The cathedral noises faded behind her as she spiraled downward into the ancient understructure of Marrowgate. The walls changed from brick to black stone older than the city itself. Strange markings covered them. Spirals, eyes, oceans, moons. At the 3rd landing she found bones. Human, arranged carefully into circles. At the 5th, the singing became clearer. At the 6th, she began hearing whispers beneath it. Personal whispers. Fragments of memory. Her mother laughing in the kitchen. Her father teaching her to wind gears. A childhood lullaby. Mira's breathing quickened. The voices knew her. By the 7th landing, the staircase opened into a massive underground chamber. And Mira stopped moving entirely. An ocean existed beneath Marrowgate. Black water stretched endlessly under the city, disappearing into darkness beyond sight. Ancient pillars rose from the depths supporting the cathedral far above. Bridges and platforms crossed the subterranean sea, many collapsed with age. And floating in the water below were thousands of people. Not corpses, sleeping bodies. Citizens of Marrowgate suspended beneath the surface with eyes closed, drifting slowly like drowned saints. The choir, their humming filled the cavern. Mira backed away in horror. One of the floating figures opened its eyes. Then another. Then hundreds, all staring directly at her. The humming stopped. Silence swallowed the cavern. A child's voice spoke gently from the water. Bellkeeper. Mira turned sharply. A little girl stood barefoot on the bridge behind her. 8 years old. Wet black hair. Blue coat. Mira nearly collapsed. It was herself. Not exactly. A younger version. Pale and dripping canal water onto the stones. You're not real, Mira whispered. The child smiled sadly. That depends what real means. Mira gripped the railing until her knuckles whitened. What are you? A memory they kept. Who? The child pointed downward. Something enormous moved beneath the black water. Far below the floating sleepers. Mira saw only shape at first. Too large for the mind to hold properly. Like a continent turning beneath the sea. Then one massive eye opened in the darkness below. Ancient. Luminous. Watching her. The whispers flooded her mind instantly. Not voices. Entire emotions. Loneliness older than history. Hunger without end. Dreams of stars drowning in black oceans. Mira staggered, clutching her head. The child version of herself stepped closer. It's been asleep a very long time, she said softly. Sleeping things dream. Dreaming things reach. What does it want? The child tilted her head. You. The water below began rising. Not violently, gently, as though the ocean itself were standing up to greet her. Mira turned to flee, and froze. The bridges behind her were filled with people. Dozens of citizens standing silently in the blue lantern light. Dead relatives. Lost lovers. Forgotten friends. Every face wore the same calm smile. Among them stood her father. This time he looked afraid. Mira, he said urgently. Don't listen to it. The younger version of Mira smiled wider. But she already is. Then every floating sleeper beneath the black water opened their mouths together, and began to sing her name. Mira. The name rolled across the underground ocean in thousands of overlapping voices. Not shouted. Sung. The sound vibrated through the cavern with hypnotic warmth, wrapping around her thoughts like soft hands pulling her toward sleep. The black water below shimmered as the floating citizens sang in perfect harmony. Mira stepped backward instinctively. The younger version of herself watched calmly from the bridge. You hear them now, the child said. Mira pressed her palms against her ears. The song continued inside her skull. What do you want from me? The child pointed toward the abyss beneath the water where the enormous eye remained open. It wants to wake. That thing isn't a god. No, the child agreed softly. Gods die easier. The citizens lining the bridges began moving closer. Slowly, not threatening, almost reverent. Her father pushed through them urgently. Mira listened carefully. His voice sounded strained, unstable, like someone speaking while drowning. The city is failing faster than expected. What are you? His expression twisted painfully. I told you already. What's left? Something behind his eyes moved, like darkness swimming under thin ice. Yes, the child laughed quietly. He's unraveling. Shut up, Elias snapped. Instantly the entire cavern reacted. The floating sleepers beneath the water opened their eyes wider. The lantern flames flickered black. The massive eye deep below shifted slightly upward. Interested, the child took another step toward Mira. You shouldn't make loud emotions down here, she whispered. It tastes them. Mira's chest tightened. Her father grabbed her shoulders. You need to leave the lower chamber now. How do I stop this? You can't stop it, the child interrupted gently. Only close the mouth again. The key, Elias said quickly. Show me the key. Mira hesitated before pulling the silver tooth-shaped object from her coat. The moment it touched the cavern light, the singing stopped completely. Absolute silence flooded the underground sea. Even the water became still. The eye below focused sharply upward. The child's smile disappeared for the first time. That should not exist anymore, she whispered. Elias looked horrified. He kept it. Who? Your grandfather. Another violent tremor shook the cavern. Above them, somewhere within the city, bells screamed backward through the storm. Dust rained from the ancient ceiling. The black water rose another few inches. Elias gripped Mira's arm harder. That key was destroyed after the first sealing. Clearly not. He lied to us. Who lied? Before he could answer, the child spoke quietly. The first Bellkeeper. The cavern darkened suddenly. Not because the lanterns dimmed. Because something enormous had moved beneath the water. Mira saw its outline now stretching impossibly far through the abyss below the city. Not flesh, not machine. Something between both and neither. Vast structures shifted beneath the surface like bones wrapped in oceans. And attached to the thing, thousands of chains. Ancient black chains disappearing upward into the foundations of Marrowgate. The city was not built over the creature. It was built to imprison it. Mira's pulse hammered painfully. What is it? Nobody answered immediately. Then Elias spoke carefully. Long before nations existed, something fell into the sea outside this coast. The child version of Mira closed her eyes as though listening to distant music. It came from the dark between worlds, Elias continued. Not invading, not conquering, dying. The thing beneath the water stirred again. The people who found it believed they were hearing angels in their dreams. They built temples, then sacrifices, then entire cities devoted to the voices. Mira stared at the floating sleepers. The choir. Elias nodded grimly. It doesn't control minds directly. It reflects longing, regret, grief. It learns people by becoming what they miss most. Her mother's face flashed in Mira's memory. If it's trapped, she whispered. Why is this happening now? Elias looked upward. Because the lock is failing. The child corrected him softly. Because someone opened it. Silence. Then Elias slowly turned toward the child. You. She smiled faintly. Partially. The black water began rippling outward from below. Something was rising. Fast. The sleepers beneath the surface drifted apart as a massive shape ascended from the depths. Chains groaned violently throughout the cavern. Mira stepped backward in terror. The thing emerging resembled neither creature nor machine. It was a tower of black mirrored surfaces rotating slowly around a hollow center. Faces moved across its reflective skin. Thousands of faces appearing and vanishing like trapped memories. Every face looked sorrowful. Every face whispered. The child looked almost affectionate. It remembers everyone. Elias shoved Mira behind him. Don't look directly into the reflections. Too late. Mira caught sight of herself on the mirrored surface. Older. Standing alone in an empty Marrowgate while black oceans swallowed the horizon. The vision hit her instantly. She felt the loneliness. Years of it. The certainty that everyone else was gone. Mira gasped and tore her eyes away. The thing beneath the water pulsed softly in response. It's reading futures now, Elias muttered. That means the mouth is nearly open, said the child. A deafening crack echoed above them. One of the gigantic chains snapped entirely free from the ceiling and plunged into the underground sea. Waves exploded across the platforms. The sleepers began singing again. Louder. Faster. Mira, Elias said urgently. There's another chamber below this one. The original lock mechanism. How do we reach it? The elevator shaft near the eastern bridge. The child sighed sadly. You still think closing the door matters? Elias glared at her. You don't get to wear her face. The child's expression hardened for the first time. I am her face. The lanterns exploded simultaneously. Darkness consumed the cavern. Then the singing became screaming. The floating sleepers convulsed violently beneath the water. Some began climbing upward onto the bridges with impossible jerking movements. Their mouths hung open too wide. The thing below had become impatient. A low pulse rolled through the underground sea. Mira suddenly saw flashes inside her mind. The sky above Marrowgate tearing open. Black oceans pouring downward from the clouds. Entire cities sleeping forever beneath rising water. And at the center of it all, herself standing before the enormous mouth in the sky holding 13 silver keys. 13, not 12. Mira looked at the single-tooth key in her hand. The child smiled in the darkness. Now you finally remember. Then every sleeper in the cavern rushed toward her at once. The sleepers hit the bridges like a tidal wave. Mira ran. Their bare feet slapped stone behind her in chaotic rhythm, while the underground cavern erupted into screams and splashing black water. Lantern fragments crunched beneath her boots as she sprinted after Elias through the darkness. Left, he shouted. She veered just as a woman lunged from the shadows. The sleeper's face split unnaturally wide, revealing not teeth but shifting darkness inside her mouth. Fingers clawed Mira's coat, nearly dragging her backward before Elias slammed the creature away with an iron pipe. It struck the railing hard and dissolved into water. Not blood, water wearing human shape. Them or projections? Mira gasped. Yes, Elias answered grimly. That was not remotely reassuring. Behind them the cavern trembled violently. More chains snapped somewhere in the abyss below. The massive mirrored structure rising from the water rotated slowly as countless reflected faces whispered across its surface. The thing beneath the city was waking faster now. Mira followed Elias across a narrow suspended bridge toward the eastern side of the cavern where ancient machinery protruded from the rock walls. Massive gears turned sluggishly beneath layers of rust and salt deposits. At the far end stood an iron platform surrounding a vertical shaft descending into darkness. The elevator, except it was impossibly old. Its mechanisms looked less engineered than grown, metal intertwined with black stone like fossilized roots. Elias grabbed a lever. Nothing happened. Of course, he muttered. The sleepers were closing in. Dozens spilled onto the bridge behind them, moving with horrifying calm. Some still wore expressions of love. Others wept silently as they approached. One little boy smiled at Mira exactly the way her younger brother used to before fever took him at age 4. Mira nearly froze. Elias slapped the control panel hard. The platform shuddered alive. Ancient gears screamed. Go! They stepped onto the elevator just as the sleepers reached the platform edge. The machinery lurched downward violently into the shaft. Hands clawed after them through the darkness. Then the upper cavern vanished above. The descent was endless. The shaft walls moved past in layers of history. Ancient stone gave way to metal. Metal gave way to strange black surfaces that seemed to absorb lantern light completely. The deeper they descended, the quieter the world became, until even the screaming vanished. Only the breathing remained, that enormous sleeping breath beneath the city. Mira finally spoke. You said the first Bellkeeper lied. Elias stared upward into the receding darkness. He didn't seal the thing below Marrowgate. Then what did he do? He built a machine to keep it dreaming. The elevator continued downward. Mira felt pressure building in her ears. How long has it been asleep? Long enough for oceans to move. The answer chilled her. The platform finally slowed beside an enormous circular doorway built into the shaft wall. Symbols covered its surface in spiraling patterns that hurt Mira's eyes if she stared too long. At the center was a keyhole. Not tooth-shaped, human-shaped. Elias looked at her carefully. This is where your family comes from. Mira laughed once from sheer exhaustion. Fantastic timing. No, he said softly. You deserve the truth before the choice is made. The choice. She hated how he said it. Elias pressed his hand against the door. The Bellkeepers weren't priests. They were engineers. The symbols glowed faintly. Centuries ago, people realized the thing below could not truly be killed. Every attempt only made it wake harder. So they built an engine around it instead. The door groaned open. Cold air spilled outward, carrying the smell of deep ocean trenches. Mira stepped through and stopped breathing. The chamber beyond was colossal. An entire hidden world existed beneath Marrowgate. Thousands of massive bronze mechanisms filled the cavern floor in concentric circles surrounding a central abyss. Pistons larger than buildings rose and fell rhythmically. Rotating rings suspended in midair hummed with blue electrical arcs. And in the center of it all stood a gigantic heart. Mechanical, black metal veins stretched from it into every direction beneath the city. Each pulse sent vibrations through the chamber. Boom, boom, boom. The engine. Mira stared in disbelief. This powers the city? Elias shook his head slowly. This powers the prison. The gigantic mechanical heart pulsed again. And somewhere far below it something answered. A low ancient moan echoed upward from the abyss beneath the engine chamber. Mira approached the edge carefully. The pit descended forever. No bottom visible. Only darkness moving slowly below. The mouth in the sky, she whispered. What is it really? Elias looked tired suddenly. An opening. For what? He met her eyes. For the sea it came from. Mira's blood ran cold. The storm above the city. The upward rain. The sleeping citizens. None of this was invasion. It was flooding. Reality itself beginning to drown. Elias moved toward a control platform near the heart engine where 12 empty slots circled a massive locking mechanism. Mira, he said quietly. How many keys do you remember? Her stomach tightened instantly, because now she did remember. Not clearly. Fragments. Dreams she had mistaken for nightmares. A hallway lined with silver teeth. A woman crying beside black water. Her grandfather whispering, 13 seals. Never 12. Mira backed away slowly. I don't want these memories. You need them. No. The chamber lights flickered. The breathing below deepened suddenly. Elias turned sharply toward the abyss. It found us. A sound began rising from the pit. Not singing. Conversation. Thousands of voices speaking simultaneously in every language Mira knew, and countless she did not. The words layered together into impossible meaning. The thing below was trying to communicate directly now. The engine trembled violently. Cracks spread across the massive heart machine. Boom, boom, boom. The chamber shook as black water erupted upward from vents across the floor. It climbed walls in twisting streams defying gravity. Then figures began emerging from it. Not sleepers. These things were unfinished. Humanoid shapes formed from dark water and reflected faces. Their bodies shifted constantly between identities like broken mirrors searching for the correct reflection. One of them stepped forward. It wore Mira's face. Older. Exhausted. Dead-eyed. We waited, it said gently. Elias pulled a revolver from inside his coat. Mira stared. You carry a gun? For conversations I don't want to finish. He fired. The mirrored creature exploded apart, then reformed instantly. More shapes emerged behind it. Dozens. Hundreds. The chamber was filling with them. Mira's older reflection tilted its head sadly. The engine is dying, it said. The dream is ending. The mechanical heart cracked down the center. A deafening pulse exploded through the cavern. Above them, impossibly far away, every bell in Marrowgate stopped ringing at once. Silence fell. Then the mouth in the sky opened completely. The first wave fell from the sky over Marrowgate at dawn. Except there was no dawn anymore. Only the open mouth above the clouds. A colossal circular abyss rotating slowly across the heavens while black water poured through it into the world below. Entire streets vanished beneath crashing tides within seconds. Cathedral towers disappeared into spiraling floods. And the water flowed upward and downward at the same time. Gravity had become uncertain. Inside the engine chamber beneath the city, Mira watched the ceiling crack open as distant screams filtered down through miles of stone. The world above was drowning. The mirrored figures surrounding the chamber smiled softly as black rain drifted around them. The sea remembers this place, said the older version of Mira. The mechanical heart behind them split wider with a thunderous metallic shriek. Blue electrical arcs burst wildly across the cavern. Elias grabbed Mira's arm. We still have a chance. How? The 13th key. The older reflection laughed gently. There was never a 13th key. Mira froze. Fragments of memory twisted painfully through her mind again. Corridor. Silver teeth. A child crying. Her grandfather's voice. Not a key. A keeper. Understanding hit her like ice water. Oh God! Elias saw it in her face immediately. You remember now. The mirrored figures stepped closer. The prison was never mechanical, the older reflection whispered. It was biological. The engine thundered again. Mira backed away from everyone. No. Elias looked devastated. You were born connected to the lock. No. The Bellkeepers learned the prison needed a living mind to shape the dream. Someone capable of holding the thing asleep. Mira shook her head violently. No. You inherited the role. The older reflection smiled with terrible sympathy. That's why it knows you so well. The chamber shook as another pulse erupted from below. Massive cracks spread across the floor around the central abyss. Black water surged upward through them in violent streams. The mouth above the city was widening. Mira could feel it now. Not physically, emotionally. A hunger pressing against reality itself. Not cruel. Not angry. Lonely. Endlessly lonely. The thing beneath Marrowgate had spent centuries dreaming because humanity trapped it inside sleep. And now it was waking confused. Her knees nearly buckled beneath the weight of that realization. It just wants to go home, she whispered. Elias stared at her in horror. Mira! It's dying here. The mirrored creatures became still, listening. Mira looked toward the abyss beneath the engine chamber. She could sense the unimaginable consciousness below more clearly now. Vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond history, and frightened. The city above screamed as buildings collapsed into floodwaters. Elias gripped her shoulders desperately. Listen to me carefully. If the mouth fully stabilizes, this world tears apart. Oceans will cross dimensions. Continents will drown. Millions die. Mira's eyes filled with tears. Because we imprisoned something we didn't understand. Because it cannot survive here without consuming everything around it. The older reflection stepped between them calmly. You call survival consumption because you fear becoming small. Elias fired the revolver again. The bullet passed through the creature harmlessly. Shut up. The mirrored Mira smiled sadly. You know I'm right. Then every reflected figure in the chamber spoke together. She can hear us now. The voices hit Mira like thunder. Not sound. Memory. She suddenly saw impossible images flooding her mind. A black ocean beneath unfamiliar stars. Gigantic living structures drifting silently through cosmic darkness. Civilizations built inside tidal worlds. And something wounded falling endlessly between dimensions before crashing into Earth's ancient sea. The creature beneath Marrowgate had not arrived as a conqueror. It had crashed here. Alone. Dying. Mira collapsed to one knee gasping. Elias looked shaken for the first time. What is it showing you? The truth. The engine behind them exploded. Half the chamber vanished beneath cascading debris and black water. Massive gears tore free from their housings. The heart machine spasmed violently. Emergency bells suddenly rang through the cavern. Not backward anymore. Forward. Elias went pale. The final sequence. What does that mean? His silence answered. Mira stood slowly. The prison is collapsing. Yes. And if I reconnect to it? You might stabilize the seal. Might. Elias looked toward the abyss. No Bellkeeper has survived full synchronization. The mirrored creatures watched quietly now. No longer hostile. Almost mourning. Above them came a deep catastrophic sound like the sky itself ripping apart. Mira imagined Marrowgate drowning in impossible oceans while dead memories walked the streets. There had to be another way. There isn't, said the older reflection softly. Mira spun. I didn't say that out loud. You don't need to anymore. The thing below was touching her thoughts directly now. Not forcing. Sharing. A strange, unbearable sadness flowed through her chest. She felt centuries of dreaming beneath the city. Endless loneliness. Endless waiting. And one overwhelming emotion stronger than all the others. Fear. Not fear of humanity. Fear of dying alone. Mira's anger vanished instantly. Oh, she whispered. Elias saw her expression change and understood immediately. Mira, don't. He's terrified. It is not human. That doesn't mean it can't suffer. The chamber fell silent except for collapsing machinery. The mirrored reflection approached her carefully. You are the first Bellkeeper to ask what we feel. We. His form rippled. For a moment Mira saw something vast looking through the human shape. Not monster. Not God. A traveler stranded impossibly far from home. We did not mean to poison your world, it whispered. Mira's tears finally fell. Above them, Marrowgate was dying. Below them, Something ancient was begging not to be abandoned again. Elias looked broken. "If you link with the engine," he said quietly, "you may be able to close the mouth." "May? You'll have to enter its dream completely." "And if I fail?" The mirrored figures answered together. "Then the sea arrives." The engine chamber shook one final violent time. The central abyss split wider open. And from the darkness below, something enormous began rising toward them at last. The thing rising from the abyss did not emerge all at once. Reality bent around it first. The chamber stretched impossibly far in every direction as though space itself were retreating to make room. The broken engine screamed under unbearable pressure. Black water floated upward in enormous spirals around the widening pit. Then the eye appeared, larger than buildings, ancient beyond language. It opened slowly beneath the ruined chamber floor and looked directly at Mira. Not with hunger, recognition. The mirrored figures surrounding the chamber knelt simultaneously. Elias stepped backward, pale with terror. "Mira," he whispered, "don't let it inside you." But it already was. Not invading, remembering. The moment the eye fixed upon her, the final pieces of her hidden memory unlocked completely. She saw her grandfather standing beside the engine decades earlier while floodwaters filled the lower chambers. She saw the first Bellkeepers linked to the machine by silver wires threaded into their skulls. She saw children tested for resonance. Most died, and she saw herself, a newborn wrapped in black cloth while the Bellkeeper pressed trembling fingers against her forehead and whispered, "This one hears the sea gently." Mira staggered. "You chose me." Elias looked shattered. "We had no alternatives. You turned me into a lock. We turned you into survival." The creature beneath the city stirred painfully. Its thoughts brushed against hers again, softer now. Not because it had grown weaker, because it finally understood she could hear. Mira stepped toward the abyss. The gigantic eye followed carefully, almost cautiously, like a wounded animal terrified of causing harm. "You came from somewhere else," she whispered. Images flowed into her mind immediately. Towering oceans drifting through starlight. Worlds built beneath living tides. A civilization swallowed by collapsing dimensions. Exodus. Panic. Loneliness. Then impact. Earth's ancient sea. Sleep. The thing had not invaded humanity. Humanity had discovered it dying and chained it out of fear. Tears blurred Mira's vision. "You were alone this whole time." The chamber trembled violently overhead. Sections of ceiling collapsed as distant floodwaters roared through the city above. Marrowgate was minutes from destruction. Elias grabbed her arm desperately. "Mira, listen to me. The mouth is stabilizing. If you don't reconnect the engine now, reality tears open permanently." She looked toward the shattered mechanical heart. Half-melted gears turned erratically while blue energy arced through broken conduits. At the center of the ruined engine stood a circular platform lined with 13 silver slots. Not for keys, for fingers, for a human hand. The final interface. The first Bellkeepers had not built a prison. They had built a sleeper cradle. And every generation sacrificed one mind to maintain the dream. Mira understood everything now. Why the dead returned wearing familiar faces. Why grief mattered. Why memory itself became dangerous. The creature could only communicate through longing. It spoke the language of absence. The mirrored version of Mira approached quietly beside her. "If you enter the dream," it said softly, "you may never wake again. And if I don't?" The reflection looked upward toward the distant city. "The sea takes your world." Elias' voice cracked. There has to be another way. But Mira already knew there wasn't. Not truly. The creature beneath them was too vast to survive awake inside human reality. And humanity was too fragile to survive the breach remaining open. One of them had to sleep. Mira walked slowly toward the ruined engine. Black water spiraled around her boots without touching them. The gigantic eye watched silently, afraid. She stopped beside the platform. "Will it hurt?" she asked. Nobody answered at first. Then the creature itself spoke inside her mind. "Only at the beginning." Mira smiled sadly. "Honest." That's new. Elias looked close to collapse now. You're my daughter. No, Mira whispered gently. I was your solution. Pain crossed his face so sharply she regretted the words instantly. But he nodded, because they were true. I tried to give you a normal life, he said quietly. I thought if the city held long enough. It didn't. No. The engine groaned again. Far above, something massive collapsed into floodwaters. Time was gone. Mira placed one trembling hand into the circular interface. Instantly the chamber exploded with light. The engine awakened violently beneath her touch. Ancient mechanisms roared back to life throughout the cavern. Silver symbols ignited across the walls. And the creature screamed, not in pain, in terror, because it finally understood what she intended. You don't have to be alone anymore, Mira whispered. The eye below widened. Emotion flooded through her mind so powerfully it nearly stopped her heart. Gratitude, fear, grief. The engine connected fully. Mira felt herself falling inward through impossible depths as memories not her own poured into her consciousness. Oceans older than stars. Civilizations long extinct. Endless drifting darkness between worlds. The mouth above Marrowgate began closing. Slowly, the black water reversing direction at last. Across the city, floods receded upward into the sky. The dead figures wandering the streets dissolved into rain. The sleeping citizens beneath the cathedral inhaled sharply as though waking from the same nightmare. But beneath the city, Mira was disappearing. Elias ran toward her. Mira! She could barely hear him now. Her body remained beside the engine, but her mind was sinking deeper into the dream below reality where the creature had slept for centuries alone. Until now, the vast consciousness curled carefully around hers, not consuming, not controlling, protecting. The loneliness inside it eased slightly for the first time in ages. Above Marrowgate, the mouth sealed shut with a sound like the ocean exhaling. The storm vanished instantly. Sunlight broke through the clouds. For the first time in hours, the bells of St. Vale rang forward. Normal, human, alive. Deep beneath the city, Elias reached his daughter just as the engine completed synchronization. Mira looked at him one last time. Her eyes reflected black oceans and distant stars. Then she smiled faintly. Tell them, she whispered. It was only trying to go home. The engine pulsed once. The chamber fell silent, and Mira Venn closed her eyes beside the sleeping sea beneath Marrowgate forever.